As 2024 draws to a close, Palestinians are counting the cost of Israel's war on Gaza. More than 44,000 men, women, and children have been killed. Survivors' homes are in ruins. And now, Israel's turning its attention to 2025 and it's setting its sights on the occupied West Bank. Violence against the Palestinians has surged there too. But there's another threat, a political one. Senior members of Israel's government want to annex the occupied West Bank, call it their own, and more than likely deal a terminal blow to any hope of a Palestinian state. Hello, I'm Darina Abu Gaida. This is Pinch Point, where geography and politics collide. Here's what we're talking about. The occupied West Bank, so called because it sits on the west bank of the River Jordan. It was occupied by Israel after the 1967 Arab-Israeli War. Israel calls the West Bank by the biblical names of Judea and Samaria, and the push to bring it under Israeli sovereignty is being led by this man, finance minister and illegal settler Bezalel Smotrich. He's counting on the support of the incoming US President Donald Trump.
אני מתכוון בעזרת השם להוביל בהמשך החלטת ממשלה שקובעת שממשלת ישראל תפעל מול הנשיא החדש מול הממשל החדש, של הנשיא טראמפ, מול הקהילה הבינלאומית, להחלת הריבונות הישראלית ביהודה ושומרון, להכרה אמריקאית ובינלאומית, ולסיום הסכסוך הישראלי-ערבי במזרח התיכון. שנת 2025 תהיה בעזרת השם שנת הריבונות ביהודה ושומרון.
And Trump has dropped many hints of his support for Israel's right wing. Let's take a listen to just one of them, given during a campaign rally in New Jersey in August.
When you look at the map, a map of the Middle East, Israel is a tiny little spot compared to these giant land masses. It's really a tiny spot. I actually said, is there any way of getting more? It's so tiny.
Well, there's a map out there which shows the true ambitions of some Israelis. Even soldiers are wearing it as a patch on their uniforms. They call it Greater Israel. And here it is on a map, and as well as the occupied territories, it takes in all of Lebanon and Jordan, most of Syria, plus a large chunk of Egypt, Iraq, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia, even a tiny bit of Turkey. And the idea has been around for a long time. It was mentioned in the diary of Zionism's founder, Theodor Herzl. That was back in 1898. Here's another map men like Smotrich like to associate themselves with. Basically, it sees Israel taking in areas controlled by Britain after the defeat of the Ottoman Empire in the First World War. It also includes the occupied territories and modern Jordan. But let's go back to the land immediately west of the River Jordan. In truth, the occupied West Bank has been run as an Israeli police state for decades. Israeli settlers attack with impunity. Since the war on Gaza began in October 2023, more than 700 people in the occupied West Bank have been killed by Israeli forces. Palestinians see it as a war on them all, but since 1967, they've watched helplessly as illegal settlers have taken larger and larger chunks of the occupied West Bank's best, most fertile land the Palestinians need for their own state. Today, there are at least 250 settlements and outposts in the occupied West Bank and occupied East Jerusalem. The settler population is growing faster than Israel's overall population. About 10% of Israel's 6.8 million Jewish citizens live in these settlements. And remember, they all violate the Fourth Geneva Convention, which prohibits an occupying power from transferring its population to an area it occupies. So these settlements, illegal under international law. Many Israelis have always had designs on the occupied territories and beyond. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu used a speech at the United Nations General Assembly in New York to show a map which conspicuously ignored both the occupied West Bank and Gaza. The map incorporated them into Israel, part of a trope describing Israel's borders as stretching from the river to the sea. Yes, from the River Jordan to the Mediterranean. And Israel isn't stopping there. It's expanded its military operations in Lebanon to try to force Hezbollah fighters north. It's been accused of attacking the United Nations peacekeepers in the process. And the moment the Assad government fell in Syria early in December, Israel advanced east from its positions in the occupied Golan Heights to secure a buffer zone put in place after the 1967 war. It's also been bombing Syria's weapons stores.
The Syrian army abandoned its positions. We gave the Israeli army the order to take over these positions to ensure that no hostile force embeds itself right next to the border of Israel.
Back in Gaza, Israel is accused of ethnic cleansing. In the north, Palestinians are under siege. Israel's media is saying there's a plan to annex large parts of the Strip. Daniela Weiss is a settler leader who's led the settlement expansion in the occupied West Bank. Here she is on the future of Gaza.
Don't think that we will stop the war in Gaza before we put a total end to Hamas, to the supporters of Hamas, and resettling the entire area of Gaza by Jews.
Bezalel Smotrich says he has no doubt that President Trump will support the decision to annex the occupied West Bank. The question now is, how far is Israel prepared to go to realize its territorial ambitions? And how many more people, Palestinians and others, are going to die in the process?